When I saw my stepsister bring the poor guy home first, I knew she had been reborn too. In our past lives, she married into a wealthy family instead of me, while I ended up with the poor guy, Philip. After marriage, she suffered from domestic abuse, had a miscarriage, and was left destitute by a mistress's scheme. Meanwhile, Philip and I started from scratch together, and he cherished me deeply. With resentment, she crashed her car into me while I was pregnant. Turns out, we both got reborn. This time around, she's eager to steal my life. She thinks my good fortune came from Philip. In truth, it did. He is talented and a great husband, while I am pretty much useless. I was lost in thought, but Philip walked straight to me. With a pitiful look, "Honey, why didn't you come find me in this life?" "Dad, Mom," my stepsister Vivian tugged at our parents' sleeves, looking incredibly pitiful. "He's really poor. Can we please let him stay?" Following her gaze, my parents looked outside the open door. A shadowy figure stood there with his head slightly bowed, looking a bit embarrassed. It was clear they didn't agree with bringing an unknown young man into the house, and they sternly rebuked Vivian. But Vivian, who always obeyed them, argued obstinately at this moment. "He only got his wallet and ID stolen. He has no one in this city. We're not short on money. Why can't we help him? And you can't judge him by his appearance. He doesn't look like an ordinary person." The noise from their argument woke me up. I groggily went down the stairs. Seeing the scene downstairs, and then the man standing at the door, I suddenly felt a shock. "Philip," I slowly turned to look at Vivian. So, she had been reborn too. Vivian is my stepsister. She's always been better at acting and pleasing our parents than me. In the previous life, I brought home a despondent poor guy with good intentions, but Vivian turned it into a big deal. She spread malicious rumors about me outside, ruining my reputation, leading William, my fiancé, to break off the engagement. Heartbroken, I left home, and the poor guy Philip stayed with me every step of the way. He protected me from drunkards, made me laugh, and watched sunrises and sunsets with me. Gradually, I fell in love with him. When I finally mustered the courage to bring him back home to ask for my dad's blessing, I found the house hosting a grand celebration. It turned out that after I left, my sister and William got closer. Before long, William's family came to seek an engagement with Vivian. She always liked to compete with me. This time, she won. She replaced me, marrying William and becoming a wealthy wife. Dad was extremely disappointed in me. Under the instigation of my stepmother and stepsister, he gave me a card and cut off our father-daughter relationship. From then on, I had no ties to that home. Philip took me away from the city, retrieved his documents, and took me to his home. He was ambitious and had ideas, so I gave him the card my dad had given me. "Go for it, Philip. Believe in yourself." Philip looked at me with teary eyes for the first time. It turned out my judgment was excellent. In just 5 years, Philip established his own company and secured a significant foothold in the big city. 6 years later, his company grew rapidly, and Philip appeared on the front pages of financial news multiple times as a rising star in the business world. Philip firmly established himself. The only constant was his love for me. In the industry, everyone knew Philip as a doting husband. He protected me well, but always mentioned my wife in public and private. Dad naturally learned about the success of the poor guy from that year. He tried every means to contact me, inviting Philip and me to spend New Year's at home. Although I knew he just wanted to get close to Philip, blood is thicker than water. Under his persistent invitation, I agreed. But unexpectedly, I never returned after that visit. Vivian's life wasn't as good as I had imagined. After marrying William, she didn't live like a wealthy lady, but had a miserable time. William had many girlfriends before marriage and didn't change after marrying. His temper was volatile, and he would scold Vivian harshly at any slight provocation. Several times, he even hit her. Once, he beat her badly, and she ended up in the hospital. She was bleeding, and after a checkup, found out she had been pregnant for 3 months. She lost the baby, and William became even more indifferent to her. He restricted her spending and confined her to the vast villa. He shamelessly brought his mistress home, being affectionate in front of Vivian. Later, Vivian accidentally saw the divorce papers William had prepared for her. William wanted her to leave with nothing. Her situation was far worse than mine. After competing with me for so many years, she ended up losing to me. This situation took a massive toll on her, especially when she returned home, only to find that her once doting father ignored her, and only showed enthusiasm in talking to Philip and inquired warmly about me. Seeing how deeply loved I was by Philip drove Vivian mad. She imagined every gesture of mine as flaunting my victory over her. One evening, she called me out. Then she drove her car into me. At that time, I was already pregnant. Maybe even the heavens couldn't bear to watch and gave me another chance at life. When I opened my eyes again, I was back 12 years ago, the year when neither Vivian nor I were married yet. But now, looking at the person standing downstairs, my mind was in a whirl. Turns out, Vivian was reborn too. She went ahead of me to find the down and out Philip. She wanted to replace me and save him. She was so eager to snatch my life away. Clearly, her first step had already been successful. Vivian thought I was so lucky, all because of Philip. As long as she could marry Philip in this life, then she would be the lucky one. To be honest, she wasn't wrong. He really is an exceptional talent and a good husband. All these years married to him, I did nothing but laze around and enjoy life. Philip spoiled me, protected me, and tolerated me unconditionally even when I threw tantrums. Sometimes, after a day of meetings, he'd come home and put on an apron to cook for me. In my previous life, he coddled me to the point of being useless. In this life, without him, how would I survive? Vivian was already walking toward Philip downstairs. She smiled at Philip. Don't worry, I will take care of you. You will live here from today. Oh, by the way, my sister has a bad temper and might not like you. If you see her, remember to avoid her. Before Vivian could paint me as a lazy, sharp-toothed, hideous creature, I ran downstairs in my nightgown. Do we have guests? I bypassed my dad, who tried to talk to me, and walked straight to Philip. With a smiling face, I extended my hand. Hi, I'm Anna. Vivian stared at me resentfully. I could almost hear her grinding her teeth. Philip looked a bit surprised, his eyes flickering when he looked up at me. I was secretly pleased. I slightly bent down, grabbed his hand, and shook it. I deeply sympathize with your situation, Philip. Don't worry, I will help you. As soon as I said that, Vivian turned her head in shock. Vivian, what did you say? She hadn't mentioned Philip's name the entire time. I just smiled at her without saying anything. Vivian's gaze toward me grew increasingly venomous. In this tense atmosphere, Dad stepped in to break the silence. He slapped my hand. That's improper behavior. He then looked sternly at Philip. Since both my daughters are so sympathetic to you, you can stay here for now. But, Dad lowered his voice. Know your place. Philip bowed humbly. Thank you, sir. After dinner, Vivian called me to the balcony. As soon as we met, she scoffed. Anna, I didn't expect you to be reborn too. I looked at her coldly. Yes, I've been reborn too. You harmed me in the past life, and now you want to steal my life again. Vivian, you've got some nerve. Vivian glared at me with hatred in her eyes. Don't be smug. This life, I will be the one to marry Philip. Right now, I felt completely calm. Vivian, is the only way you can think of to beat me using a man. Back in my room, I sat on the couch, contemplating my life. Even though I verbally made Vivian furious, I wasn't confident inside. What if Philip really liked her? What if they actually got married? What would I do then? It's not his future money I want, it's him. I genuinely like this guy. Now that Vivian had the upper hand and brought Philip home, if he fell for her at first sight, I'd be devastated. I furiously rubbed my hair, my mind a tangled mess. I was clueless about what to do when someone knocked on my door. I glanced at my phone. It's already midnight. Does Vivian never stop? I walked over in frustration and yanked the door open. What do you want? Seeing who stood at the door, I fell silent. Why is it you? Philip stood in front of me, looking down, the shadow of his bangs covering his eyes, making it hard to read his expression. He stood there motionless, just staring at me. I called out again. Do you need something? Philip said something that made no sense. I just came to your house today. I was puzzled. I had only told Vivian my name. I was about to say Vivian had called me, but then he spoke again. From start to finish, I never saw her talk to you. So, how did you know my name? I was stunned. I intended to scare Vivian, but I ended up digging a hole for myself. Should I tell him I was reborn? Probably not. He'd think I was crazy. While my mind was racing, he suddenly moved. He walked straight into my room, forcing me to step back. Philip closed the door behind him. I looked at him in horror. Could it be that Philip was this kind of person? But instead, he wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling me into his embrace. I felt his body heat, rigid with tension. Philip rested his head on my shoulder, the gesture the same as in our previous life. Honey, I knew you'd come back too. Honey, his voice had a hint of grievance. Why didn't you come to find me this time? I murmured, sorry, I overslept. When I first got reborn, after experiencing confusion, excitement, joy, resentment, and sadness, I decided to take it easy for a bit. After all, it was still a few days before the time I found Philip in my previous life. I wasn't in a rush, but I didn't expect Vivian to get to him first. I felt a familiar wet sensation on my shoulder. Philip started crying. It's so good to see you again. Philip had also been reborn. He came to find me with the memories of his past life. My heart felt like it was being gently tickled by a feather, So I reached out and hugged his waist. How did he live after I died in our past life? How did he get reborn? Did he encounter some accident? Or did he have to end his own life? I didn't ask any of these questions. It was late at night. Philip held me as we lay in bed. We've been married for many years, so there was no shyness as there would be between strangers. All there was the joy of being reunited. Philip held me tightly, his arms trembling slightly, as if afraid that his hard-earned precious treasure might be snatched away. I gently patted the back of his hand, and slowly drifted off to sleep. A scream woke me up. I groggily sat up, only to see my dad's slap coming down. I held my head and scrambled away. What are you doing, you embarrassing piece of work? My dad was red-faced and fuming. You actually, he pointed at me, unable to speak for a while. It wasn't until Philip stood protectively in front of me that I realized what was happening. On the messy bed, I was lying with a man I had just met yesterday, disheveled and barely clothed. If I were my dad, I'd be going crazy too. Dad, let me explain. I tried to stay calm. It's a bit complicated, but I can explain. My dad took a few breaths. Fine, explain. How do I even explain this? I was at a loss. Just as I was about to speak, Philip gently pulled me behind him. Anna and I fell in love at first sight. Yesterday was my fault for being hasty and thoughtless. I will marry her and take care of her for life. He knelt in front of my dad. Please don't blame her. My dad was taken aback, then let out a roar. Early in the morning, my house was in chaos. Philip and I each received a scolding and sat at the front door. Vivian, who had been silently watching, finally spoke up. She looked at me, then at Philip. She smiled bitterly. So that's how it is. She stared at Philip. You also got reborn. No wonder I was able to find you so quickly. No wonder you came home with me with little persuasion. It turns out you were the one looking for me. Vivian seemed a bit deranged, almost as if she was talking to herself, more than to Philip. She glared at me. You must be so pleased, right? Do you think I look like a clown to you? Anna, why do you always have to be such an eyesore? Why? Her eyes red with anger. She grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it at me. I was stunned for a moment. Philip got up, but I held out a hand to stop him. Vivian continued to glare at me. I got up and kicked her, catching her off guard and knocking her to the ground. I straddled her, grabbing her neck and shouted, You feel wronged. What right do you have to feel wronged? When I had a happy family, you hit me with your car and killed me. You should be grateful I didn't kill you right then. And you feel wronged. Vivian, have some shame. Vivian went crazy too, throwing me off onto the ground. When I was a kid, I was hidden away, with nothing as good as you. Later, when I moved into your house, people mocked me, saying I wasn't as polite, or as good a student as you. I was always compared to you. Even after getting married, my life was still worse than yours. Why can't I feel wronged? I laughed. Who's to blame for that? Not yourself. Vivian was my dad's illegitimate daughter. Her mom was my dad's kept woman. She didn't move into our house until after my mom passed away, bringing her mom along. Vivian screamed, Blame you. I blame you. Philip was about to pull her off me when I gave him a look, and he stopped. Vivian and I fought, releasing all the pent-up anger I had. I didn't hold back, scratching up Vivian's face. It wasn't until my dad and her mom finally arrived that we were pulled apart. Seeing his usually well-behaved daughters suddenly fighting like this, my dad demanded to know why. Neither Vivian nor I said anything, keeping silent. My dad pondered all night and finally decided to blame Philip. He threw Philip's few belongings out. Our house is small and can't afford to keep you. Leave now. That night, I packed up my things and left with Philip. Reliving these events from our past, in some ways, was rather amusing, but we hadn't even reached the train station before my dad's men dragged me back. I figured Vivian must have ratted us out. I held onto Philip's arm, refusing to let go. The bodyguards couldn't separate us, so they had to take us both back home. My dad, filled with anger, had chest pains and pointed a trembling finger at Philip. What do you see in him? I bit my lip, turned and kissed Philip on the cheek. Because I love him, there's no other reason. My dad nearly fainted from rage. He calmed down and began to reason with me. If you leave with him now, what will become of our family? You're supposed to get engaged to William in less than a month. I fell silent. The engagement with William was something my mom planned before she passed away. In my previous life, I ran away and Vivian ended up with William. But this time, instinctively, I glanced at Vivian. She trembled and shouted, Why are you looking at me? If you don't want him, I don't want him either. My dad was stunned. To him, William was the perfect son-in-law, wealthy and handsome, someone to be proud of. He never expected that in our eyes, William was just a rotten leaf. Anna, you set me up. You actually wanted me to marry William. You're trying to ruin me. If he's your husband, who else should marry him? He's your husband. Your husband. Yours. I don't want him, she screamed. The next day, people came from William's family, which caught us all off guard. William's butler politely asked my dad to get in the car, saying they had urgent matters to discuss. My dad left in the afternoon and didn't return until the evening. My stepmom rushed to him. What happened? What's the urgent matter? I pulled Philip and stood in the yard, and Vivian came out when she heard the noise. Dad looked at me with a strange expression. They said William wants to break off the engagement with you. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Really? Dad then looked at Vivian, who was eating sunflower seeds. William said he wants to marry you. Vivian's face changed dramatically, and the seeds fell to the ground. Under her loud questioning, Dad explained the situation. Apparently, some rumor got out that your sister has already eloped with another man. After he said that, the room fell silent. The servants looked at each other nervously. We'll need to investigate who leaked it, but that's not the main issue right now. The main issue is, why is William suddenly interested in Vivian? She's never even bothered him. Dad continued to explain. William saw Vivian showing kindness to homeless people under a bridge recently, and he thought Vivian was kind and lovely, more to his liking than Anna. Vivian, that's insane. Vivian was strongly against this, but her opposition was useless. No matter what she said, Dad and stepmom were determined to marry her off to William. After all, they have power and status, which is fundamentally different from our upstart family. Dad wouldn't pass up this opportunity to climb the social ladder. It seems everything is running according to the trajectory of the previous life. Remembering everything that happened in the previous life and William's face made Vivian feel uneasy. Philip squeezed my hand. Honey, are we leaving? Let's wait. I have a feeling Vivian has something big planned. Okay. Philip always listens to me, no exceptions. Turns out, my hunch was correct. Vivian hired some kidnappers posing as bodyguards at a high-end club to take William away. In short, she kidnapped William. When I heard the news, I really wanted to applaud her. What kind of mindset does it take to come up with such an outrageous solution? When we rushed to the scene after getting the news, William was bruised and unconscious, his eyes covered, and he was tied up. He must have already passed out. Are you crazy? Dad rushed over in a panic, his face turning pale as he looked at William on the ground. If you want to die, don't drag us down with you. Vivian's thoughts were simple. She would rather die than marry William, and if she had to marry him, she would kill herself. And she wanted to avenge the grudges from the previous life before she died. She wanted William to die with her. My sister is really crazy. While Vivian was distracted, Dad had people knock her out and take her away. We all looked at each other around William. Now what? Philip, who hadn't spoken, finally did. Does he have enemies? Dad turned to look at him. Are you saying? Good idea. Dad put in eye drops and rushed to have people carry William back to his house. When Dad returned, we were packing our bags. He strolled around leisurely. I said I accidentally saw William being kidnapped and hurriedly gathered people to save him, and they were so grateful that they insisted I stay for dinner. He talked for a long time and then frowned when he saw no one was paying attention. What are you doing? I smiled, getting ready to run. How could Vivian's sloppy kidnapping fool them? It's only a matter of time before they come after us. Dad looked at Philip, stunned. Didn't you say to divert trouble? Philip closed the suitcase and glanced at him. Just to give you an excuse to get out of their house safely. He turned to me. Honey, let's go. When we left home, Dad hadn't even processed it. He only called and scolded me when we were already on the train. I hung up the phone, took a long breath, and leaned peacefully on Philip's shoulder. He intertwined his fingers with mine. Honey, you'll have a tough time with me again. I laughed. Will you make it last long? Philip, no, I promise. Through the train window, Philip saw the sneaky Vivian from the back car. She had followed us the whole way. I felt sleepy. Let her follow. Philip nodded and said nothing. I know he had doubts in his mind, wondering why, despite how Vivian treated me, I was still kind to her. I patted Philip's hand and started talking about some things from the past life. Things he didn't know about. Philip's entrepreneurial journey was nowhere near smooth. He had to socialize constantly, seek investments, and find partners in the early stages. He had banquets almost every day. There was a period when he was at a low point, and he was bullied at a dinner table, damaging his stomach and ending up in the hospital. I couldn't stand it, so I went to confront the boss who had bullied him alone. Back then, I was stupid and naive. The boss said that if I drank all the alcohol, he would sign the contract with Philip. I believed him. I, who usually gets drunk on a glass of red wine, downed all that liquor. After finishing the drinks, I was barely conscious. The boss began to pull me, trying to take advantage of me, and he held me as he tried to take me to the upper floors. At that moment, Vivian came down the stairs. She was there for a banquet with William, as they had just married, and it was the same hotel. They had just gotten married not long ago, and William was still treating Vivian well at the time. Thinking back, that was probably her most glorious moment. So, seeing me in such a plight, maybe out of pity or maybe to show off, she intervened. "You can't take her." She pushed the boss, holding me. "She's my sister." I remember hearing her say that back then. Always stuck with me. So later on, I just wanted to get along with her. But I didn't expect her days to get increasingly harder, and she became more extreme with it. So extreme that no matter what I said, she thought I was up to no good. Philip never knew about it, so hearing it now left him stunned. "Honey, you never told me about this." His eyes were red, gripping my hand tightly, clearly trying to hold something back. "Who is that person?" he asked me. "The one who bullied you." Philip seemed gentle on the surface, but he was ruthless at heart. I knew he was about to get stubborn, so I quickly hugged him and kissed his face. "It's all in the past. Let's make the most of this life together." And just like that, Vivian followed us to Los Angeles. My dad was furious about our sudden departure and immediately cut off our bank cards. Starting this life with no seed money didn't faze Philip at all. Of course, he navigated the business world expertly in his past life, knew exactly how to seize and create opportunities. The next evening, Vivian stopped me outside the hotel. She looked at me with complicated eyes. "I want to talk to you." Philip frowned and was about to pull me away. Since my rebirth, he's always been afraid of me being alone with her. But Vivian grabbed my clothes, looking up at me, and I saw a bit of pleading in her eyes. I hesitated. "What do you want to talk about?" Philip waited under a distant lamppost, eyes fixed on me. Vivian averted her gaze and handed me a card. "My mom gave this to me before I left. It's for you guys." I was puzzled. "What are you doing?" "Anna, I can't compare to you." Vivian forced a smile, but it looked worse than crying. "I won't compete with you in this life. You were right before. Beating you doesn't have to rely on a man." I was shocked. "What's gotten into you? Why the sudden change?" Vivian rolled her eyes without responding. Philip stood still in the distance, watching, afraid Vivian might suddenly snap again. Vivian was silent for a moment. Before I could speak again, she said, "I'm sorry." I was stunned. "In our past life, I wronged you." Her eyes turned red, fists clenched tightly. "You?" My throat felt dry as I looked at her. "Why all of a sudden?" "Take the card. I won't bother you again." Vivian cut me off, taking a deep breath and wiping away her tears. "I'm not bad myself. Graduated from a prestigious university, quick learner. I can live well without a man." Before leaving, she smiled at me. "But I still envy you, Anna. You're luckier than I am." Vivian walked away, steps lighter. She wrapped herself in her coat, walking back the way she came. Philip came over and held my hand. "Let's go home." Once winter passed, our lives got busier. Based on memories from the past life, Philip embarked on his second startup journey. This time, he avoided every risk he could and bypassed any unnecessary detours. As a result, he became busier. Until one night, he came home reeking of alcohol and unusually clung to me. After he fell asleep, I carefully got up. Turning on the light, I started undressing him and noticed the wounds on his hands, bruises and cuts on his knuckles, some still bleeding. I stayed quiet for a few seconds and applied medicine to his injuries. Philip didn't say anything, so I didn't ask. I discreetly inquired with the partner, who was at the same drinking event. The partner was surprised. Philip got hurt. I didn't know. The atmosphere was great that night, no conflicts. He thought for a moment and added, "Though I heard another boss got beaten up in the restroom. Someone ambushed him. No one saw who did it." I had a hunch and asked, "What's that boss's name?" It was Sam, the one from my past life who bullied me. Suddenly, I understood where Philip's injuries came from. He must have gotten into a fight. Besides that small incident, Philip's entrepreneurial journey was smooth. His partner was amazed. "Philip, you're incredible. How did you know Accompany was interested in the AI field?" "Our project fits them perfectly." After making some money, Philip bought a small 700 square foot house in Los Angeles. He said, "I want to give you a home as soon as possible." I designed and decorated the house myself, and for the party, we only invited close friends to celebrate. They looked around, impressed. "Anna, your house design is fantastic, very stylish." Someone chimed in, "Anna, you should open an interior design studio. It would be a hit." My major in college was design, and my dream had always been to become an interior designer. That night, after everyone left, Philip noticed my distraction. He tidied up the house and brought me to the balcony. Fireworks brightened the sky. "Honey, do whatever you want. I'll always support you," he said, I don't want you feeling trapped by this little house because of me. Anna, you deserve a more exciting life. The doorbell rang. Philip went to answer it. It was a delivery guy with a package. Someone sent you a housewarming gift. No sender info, but inside was a beautiful golden lock. Guess who it's from? Philip asked. Vivian. I met Vivian again on the opening day of my design studio. She was the first customer in the door. I haven't bought a house yet, but I'm making a reservation. When I get my first place, you'll design it, right? Now, we could sit in a cafe and chat calmly. Vivian said she's into cross-border e-commerce. With the popularization of the internet and the development of technology, some cross-border e-commerce platforms have gradually started to realize cross-border sales and distribution through self-built overseas warehouses and logistics systems. This is an opportunity, and Vivian is ready to seize this wave. It's only now that I seem to understand her. She mentioned her parents again, and since we left, William has been openly and secretly suppressing our family business. She and her mom have always kept in touch. Dad started drinking heavily. When he got drunk, he'd curse us all, one by one, called us ungrateful brats. Speaking of this, she paused. In the past life, when he wanted to cut ties with you, it wasn't because of me and Mom's urging. He did it on his own to please me. Our dad is really something. In this life, we're all enjoying the benefits of the times. Philip's company took off smoothly. He recognizes talents and has promoted many young people who were talented but lacked opportunities. With their passion, they made a name for themselves with Philip in Los Angeles. I heard Vivian's business is also booming. She started her own e-commerce company and is incredibly busy. As for me, I'm fully dedicated to my studio. I may not earn much, but I feel content inside. This life seems similar to the last, and yet, when you think about it, everything feels different. Sometimes I accompany Philip to some business banquets. He'd hold my hand and introduce me. This is my wife. Those young women with other intentions got the hint and kept their interactions within boundaries. They were all career women. To them, men were plenty. As they clinked glasses and chatted, I couldn't help but feel bored. I told Philip I needed some fresh air and walked to the window. It looked lively upstairs too. Heard some other company was hosting a party here. I glanced down and spotted a familiar figure. It was Vivian. She seemed drunk, staggering a bit. A guy in a clean shirt with tousled hair followed her, looking quite youthful. He reached out to support Vivian, concern evident in his eyes. I got interested, leaned against the window and watched. Vivian pushed the guy away. He stepped closer again. Vivian looked upset and said something to him. Judging by her mouth movement, it wasn't pleasant. I was debating whether to go down and help her out, when the next moment, Vivian grabbed the guy's collar and pulled him down. Watching Vivian tiptoe and kiss his lips, I almost spilled my wine. Warm hands covered my eyes from behind. Don't peek. I moved Philip's hand away, watching with interest. Good for them. That guy looks. Philip glanced at me. Looks what? His tone slightly lifted. Young. Philip pulled me away from the window, whispering in my ear. Are you saying I'm old now? I hadn't caught on to his tone yet. That night, begging for mercy was too late. Vivian started dating that guy. I asked her about him. Is he rich? Just a regular family. Is he smart and capable? He's alright. Pretty average too. I asked. Then what do you see in him? This was completely different from Vivian's usual standards. Vivian stirred her coffee and smiled. He likes me a lot. I'm willing to give him a chance, and myself too. After some small talk, Vivian grabbed her bag and stood up to leave. Before leaving, she invited me. I started a bar with someone else. Do you want to come by sometime? I'll get you a good drink. I said, stopping by is fine, but I won't drink. Vivian paused, looked at me. I smiled and touched my belly. I'm pregnant. Vivian's gaze dropped to my belly, looking a bit dazed. After a long moment, she said, that's wonderful. When I was 5 months pregnant, Philip had an important business to handle, and he had to go on a half-month trip. He hesitated for a long time, before I finally persuaded him to leave. The day after Philip left, Vivian showed up at my door with a suitcase. I was stunned. What are you doing? She rolled her eyes. Philip actually dared to leave a pregnant woman alone at home. Move over, I need to pack. Vivian insisted on staying at my place. She worked at her company during the day and stayed close to me, even working beside me at home. She hired several housekeepers, not letting me do anything. Gradually, I noticed that Vivian seemed exceptionally concerned about my unborn child. One night, she had some setbacks at work and drank a few glasses of red wine. Even after drinking, she didn't forget to remind me to go to bed on time and take my supplements. I stopped her. Vivian, are you feeling guilty? Because in our past life, you hit me with a car and killed the baby in my womb along with me. Vivian stiffened at my words. her knuckles turning white as she gripped the blanket. I didn't press her, just watched quietly. Vivian's hands dropped. She knelt down by my bed, her forehead against my hand, her back bent. "Anna, I'm sorry." Her voice was choked with sobs. "I didn't know you were pregnant then. If I had known, I wouldn't have done it. I'm sorry. Every time I wake up at midnight, I have nightmares. I dream of you covered in blood, holding a child calling me auntie." Drunk, she spilled the words she had buried inside for so long. It was the first time I saw her cry in front of me. No, the second time. Watching her shoulder shake lightly, I suddenly remembered the first time I met her as a child. At that time, I was 10, and she was 8. My stepmom brought her to our home. "Go, that's your sister. Go play with her." Dad nudged her, urging her to come to me. She took a timid step towards me. I had a lot of animosity towards her and her mom back then. I just glared at her and turned away. Vivian stopped, too scared to come any closer. Dad enrolled her in the same school as me. Because of me, school wasn't easy for Vivian. Everyone knew she was my dad's illegitimate daughter, and they made things hard for her, overtly and covertly. Even though I didn't encourage it, I didn't stop it either. Later, a friend asked me, "Your stepsister is really thick-skinned. You ignore her, and she still follows you around every day." I said, "Yeah, she's just like her mom, annoying." I turned around to see Vivian standing not far away, watching us. She was holding a homemade cake, probably meant for me. I looked at her, and she looked back at me. Then her eyes turned red. She bit her lip hard, and tears started to fall. It was the first time I saw her cry. After that, she started competing with me, trying to outdo me and grab what was mine. Thinking back, a lot of her obsessive and extreme behavior later on was partly my fault. I sighed and patted Vivian's shoulder. "Stop crying," I said. "Your nephew just kicked me and said he doesn't like hearing his aunt cry." Vivian's crying stopped, her cheeks flushed. She rubbed her face and got up slowly. "You should get some rest. I've got things to do." She didn't dare meet my eyes and left my room. Vivian's epilogue. The night I arrived in Los Angeles with Anna and Philip, I had a dream. I dreamt about my past life. I saw Anna and Philip's home in Los Angeles. They seemed to be packing up to go home. Anna asked Philip, "Can I borrow your legal team?" Philip looked surprised. "Why?" Anna was silent for a few seconds, then hugged Philip. "I heard about Vivian's situation. I want to help her," Philip said. "But don't you usually not get along with her?" Anna said, seeing her struggle. "I don't feel any happier." I heard her say, "Vivian is just very competitive, but she's not a bad person at heart." They couldn't see me, so I quietly followed them. I watched them drive back home. I saw Anna asking Mom about my situation. I saw myself standing behind Anna and Philip, with hateful, venomous eyes. I saw myself call Anna out. I trembled, trying to stop them, but they walked right through my transparent body. I followed them out of the house. Anna stood by the roadside waiting for me. She was talking to Philip on the phone about my situation. "Philip, when you introduce the lawyer to Vivian, don't tell her it's my idea." Anna lowered her voice on the phone. "I'm afraid she still holds a grudge against me and won't accept it. Alan is great at handling divorce cases. He should secure her the best deal, so she'll be better off." Though her voice was low, it was clear in my ears. I looked at her, trembling, and noticed her slightly swollen belly for the first time. She was pregnant, I realized now. In the distance, I heard the sound of a car speeding. Headlights suddenly shone into Anna's eyes. Anna instinctively stepped toward the roadside, one hand shielding her eyes, the other protecting her belly. I saw myself in the car, a twisted, angry expression on my face. "No." I instinctively rushed forward, trying to stop the car, but I was transparent, and my attempt to stop it was useless. The car hit Anna, and blood was everywhere. I stood there, shocked. My heart ached. I was wrong. I was so wrong. The scene around me started to distort and change. In an instant, I found myself in another setting, feeling dizzy. When I came to, I was in a different scene. In an empty room, Philip sat quietly holding Anna's ashes. He didn't turn on the lights, but I saw his head full of grey hair. Anna was dead, and he had lost the will to live. I knelt on the ground, crying uncontrollably. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I regretted it. I really did." But the dream wasn't over. I saw Philip one night, ending his own life while holding Anna's ashes. I saw our family business collapse, competitors dividing up the assets. Mom was kicked out by Dad, who called her bad luck. I saw William's disdain upon my death. William only set up a small shrine for me and was hailed as a good, devoted husband. Their business thrived, and beautiful women kept coming into William's life. Everything I had done seemed like a joke, and I was a total clown. I woke up from the dream screaming. Looking in the mirror, I realized I had to live differently. The day Anna gave birth, I waited outside the delivery room with Philip. He stopped my pacing. "Vivian, can you stop stressing out?" he said helplessly. "I'm the father, remember?" I glared at him. "And I'm the aunt." Then I kept pacing. Philip seemed calm, but his tightly pressed lips showed his anxiety. Maybe to distract himself, he called out to me. "William wants to patch things up," he said. "What's your take on it?" "William never married me in this life. He married the daughter of a real estate magnate. But a leopard doesn't change its spots. He couldn't stay faithful after marriage. When his affairs were discovered by the heiress, she confronted him. Annoyed, he slapped her, just like he did to me in our past life. But the heiress's father was much tougher than mine. Before her family got into real estate, they had underworld ties. The day after his daughter was hit, her father brought men over, took his daughter home, and broke William's leg. A few days later, William was exposed for drug involvement and mental instability. He got arrested by the police. No matter the investigation results, their company's business was already greatly affected. A lot of groups wanted to stir the waters, hoping to get a piece of the pie. Philip and I were one of them. This time, William's family came to negotiate peace. It was clear they were really at their limits. I laughed. "Philip, are you afraid your pockets are too full?" "Of course not." Philip pointed towards the delivery room. "I still have a wife and kid to take care of." While we were talking, a nurse came out of the delivery room. "Family of the patient Anna." "Here." I shoved Philip aside and rushed over. "How's my sister?" The nurse smiled. "Congratulations. Both mother and baby are safe and sound."